Well, welcome, listeners. Joining us today is someone who is not just an artist, but a teacher and an influencer. A Belgium native, he relocated to the United Kingdom and eventually the United States. Spending decades photographing the streets of Chicago as well as the streets of Shanghai, our guest has spent a lot of time exploring humanistic form and the impact of humanity on the environments around us. Our guest also is the director and curator of Eyes on Main Street, a photographic festival in Wilson, North Carolina. Eyes on Main Street is a nonprofit organization that acts as a central hub for photographers worldwide. Curation, donations, and even offering artist residencies. Our guest has gone far beyond expectations and not just practiced his photography, but nurtured and protected the medium within the public eye. So with all of this said, please help us in welcoming our guest, Mr. Jerome De Perlinghi. Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, no problem. Did you make it here safe and sound? No issues with travel?
No issues with travel. I mean, of course, crossing DC is always going to be a challenge.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
We hit DC just shortly before 5. It's the wrong time of the day. We knew this. There's nothing you can do, so you just try to be a little bit more patient in the car, and that's it. We arrive a bit later than planned, but that's okay. I mean, that's the only problem we had.
So our first question that we wanted to ask you is, will you discuss your process of making work in Shanghai, and how did the average citizens react to seeing the camera?
So I think what you need to know is that Shanghai, for me, was also a family trip because my grandmother was born in Shanghai or just outside of Shanghai, in early 20th century. And so she came to Belgium to study and there met my grandfather. But, from a very early age, I was, connected to the Chinese culture through my grandmother. And so when I was 24, just graduated from college, I said, maybe this is the right time to go to Shanghai. And that's how I ended up the first time in 1985 in Shanghai, and it became very much part of my photographic story because next month I will be doing my 12th trip to Shanghai, mostly photo trip, so that's the reason why I go there. It's actually become a little bit my largest body of work. And what I was able to do, I think, is becoming stronger today because in 1985, 1987, there were actually very few, foreigners in Shanghai because the country was still pretty much closed, or closed off. I mean, it's only in 1979 that foreigners, it became a bit easier to go to Shanghai, and so that's what happened. So 85 is only like 6 years after that opening date, and I was definitely, very much interested by this culture. I think at first in 1985, really strange because they were not used to seeing foreigners. People look at me like, almost like, oh, he's coming from Mars. It's like, totally like a different planet. And so it became, this common, interest. They were looking at me and I was looking at them. And so they were like, okay, yes, it was actually pretty easy to photograph Shanghai, especially back then, 85, 87 for sure. Now, like any major city, Shanghai has become a really big, large city. It's actually become a little more complicated, like in any modern city. People want to know why you're going to take my picture and so on. But, the early years were definitely, the more easy one, I would say. And so people would react in a kind of interesting way. It was actually interesting to see a foreigner. It would happen sometimes, even in a major city. We're talking a city back then, already 12 million people. Well, sometimes you would not see another foreigner, during the whole day. You may decide to walk the whole day long, and you would definitely not bump into another single foreigner. So, meaning for them, it was like, when you go into these very small streets, it's like, who is this guy? Where does he come from? And so it was actually good, good relationship. I don't speak any Chinese, just I can say hello, goodbye, 10 words to be polite. And most of them, especially in those, 85, but still today, to this day, not speak English. So communication happens through the camera and through hands and smiles.
Has the culture of Shanghai had an impact on you? I'm spending 11 trips so far going there. That's a lot of time to have their society and culture wear off on you.
I think the biggest influence probably on me is that it's very vibrant. And this is true overall for Asia. I think, Asia, I'm a big believer that Asia is, definitely the continent of the future. And I know a lot of people in America, be disturbed by some kind of statement like that. But definitely, they will rise early in the morning. You go out at 5 a.m. in the morning, and already the streets are full with millions of people. And so, in that sense, I was confident in my own little life where like I said this morning, I got up really early and I started walking here, and I was by myself here this morning, but I'm really happy to have done that this morning. So in that sense, it just basically because I'm a quarter Chinese myself, sometimes I believe maybe I'm more Asian than I think I am.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So what is the most interesting person you've met while you were shooting?
So this is a complicated question because I've been shooting a little bit everywhere. I've been shooting different things. So if we go away from Shanghai, there's definitely I could give you a couple of names because I do also portraits of celebrities. You've probably saw that on my website, and it's really hard to pick up one name because I've been lucky enough to meet quite a few people. But if I would say just a few, well, Liam Neeson would definitely be one because I got lucky to spend like a whole week with Liam Neeson. There was a film festival in France, so I got to basically. I was helped by Liam Neeson to photograph some other people. It happened this way. So I'm in Deauville. I'm working for a French newspaper. I do portraiture for the back page of the newspaper. And so I do a portrait of Liam Neeson. And a couple of hours later, he comes back to me and says, well, I have a very good friend from Ireland, Northern Ireland. He was born in Belfast. He's here. We haven't had a photograph together for a long time. Do you mind taking a portrait of us together? I said, no, this is film. This is before digital time. This is, in the late 90s. And I said, of course, with pleasure. So I put up my camera and my backdrop, would take a photograph. And ever since that moment, he just took me under his wing. And so he was there as a jury member at the festival. And so whenever the screenings were over, it'd take me over to the bar and would have drinks together. I don't drink alcohol. I only drink Coca-Cola. So I would have a Coca-Cola and he would have like a drink, And so I spent like a whole week like that. And so it's the year where they did one of the Star Wars movie. I think it was number 3. And the other part in that movie is Ewan McGregor, also a famous actor. And so before I knew it, it was like 5 or 6 different actors right there, and I'm in the middle of the actors and participating in the conversation. So definitely, that was a fantastic person. But I met so many that it's a bit unjust. But you asked me one name, so I decided to give you basically Liam Neeson today.
That's a pretty solid first name.
Yeah.
So a little bit of more of a foundation of your work. What inspires you to create? Why Shanghai, for instance?
So first of all, I'm lucky enough to live in a family. So I'm 14, 15 years old. So there's cameras home. There's basically a dark room. There's photo books. So the photo books by those famous photographers are right there in the house. We're talking William Klein. We're talking Henri Cartier-Bresson. Henri Cartier-Bresson worked extensively, around Shanghai. Then we're talking now in the 30s, So even before the revolution, before the war, several photographs stuck in my mind. Bank of China. There's a very famous photograph of him, Bank of China, just before the revolution, when people want to get the money out of the account because the communists are going to take over the country. And it's a very, very famous photo where everybody's pushing everyone, and Henri Cartier-Bresson is right there, snap the shot. And so then you add to that, the Chinese side, the connection with my grandmother. And so I get to go to Shanghai in 85, and basically the city looks like a little bit like London, a little bit like New York, a little bit like Paris, because the city was divided in different concessions, where the French had the concession, the Americans had the concession, the German had the concession. And so the architecture looks like, on the Hudson River in New York. But, of course, there's no Americans walking there. Is mostly like Chinese. And so this relationship between East and West right away is, quite interesting, really breathtaking in a sense. And I fell in love right away with Shanghai in 1985. I stay about 10 days. I stay with the family because I still have family there. The sister of my grandmother lives there. She's the best Chinese cook in the whole world. I mean, the best. I've eaten Chinese now for 50 years or 58 years. Everywhere. It's the best Chinese cook ever. And so all these little, things put together make the fact that, I say to myself in 85, I want to come back. We go back with my wife, in 1987. We stayed 5 months. I worked extensively on a much larger portfolio with, for the first time, the idea of doing a book about Shanghai. And then it takes me another few trips, another few years. And then in the year 2000, Paris, a French publishing company published my book, Shanghai.
That's fantastic.
That's fantastic. So, do you have any advice on making work with strangers for subjects?
So basically, I think the key is two keys. I mean, you have to know exactly what you want to know, or what you're going to do, or what you want to just record. And once you decide that in your head, you just go and do it. So, stranger or not stranger, you don't care. I mean, you've got this idea in your head, and so I will bump into you in the street, and I say, "This is my shot this morning," and I try to get the shot. When you do street photography, you can't have too much thinking behind it. You just go for it. And then, of course, sometimes you succeed in your image, and sometimes you do not succeed in your image. But then the more you try and the more you do it, the more you're going to succeed in your image. Because basically what happens is that I'm going to go back to Shanghai next month, like I said. Well, as I will be walking on the street, the images will already appear in my head before I actually have the time to push the shutter release. But what I'm trying to say here is that you have to see it before you're able to snap it, because if you wait too long, then you're too late. You'll snap it, but the photo will not be the one you had in your head just a few seconds before. And of course, the more you do it, the easier it becomes. I'm in my 50s, so of course I've got more experience and a lot more miles, than young photographers who are gonna do the same here from school. But I think you have to the key is to break your fear. If you're really afraid of how will they react, what's going to happen, then you tend to miss that picture. And it's not easy at first. It takes a little bit of you have to be a little bit daring. I think if you're not daring, it doesn't work the same way. And then eventually, once in a while, somebody gets angry. But so far, knock on wood, nobody got as angry as to like beat me up or something like that. So
That's
just
good.
like, and then you go fast. Basically, I will also work with very light equipment, so people sometimes barely realize I'm a photographer. So Henri Cartier-Bresson was the master in that. He would snap the picture, and before you even realize it, it'd be like 10 yards away already. So you didn't even know that he had taken the picture, and so it's an exercise. The more you do it, the better you become, I think.
Thank you. So we'll take the conversation home and stateside. Maybe you want to take a little bit of time and talk about Eyes on Main Street. How did you get involved with the festival?
So in 2011, we moved from Chicago, Illinois, to North Carolina. And so we bought an historical home in a small town, about 50,000 people. It's the South. We had never lived in the South, so it was a change for us. But what I knew before moving is that, for a long time I wanted to do a set of portraits of unknown people, because I just told you that, I photograph celebrities, Liam Neeson, Johnny Depp, many others. But now, and before that, I had done, quite a few other sets about, just real common mortals, just like anybody. And so it was my intention to do another set on film, like not digital. I wanted to work with film, a film camera. So I used basically a Fuji 6x9. The negative is 6x9, so 2.25 by 3.25. And so it was, just basically a project that I wanted to do for many months. So I did it for about 30 months, and so I put a backdrop and a studio outside street corners. So I would choose a different street corner about once a week. I would do it about once a week, depending on other assignments, other teaching job I had. And so about once a week, I would stand in the corner of Chestnut Street right here. So put my backdrop, and I wait for you to come by and say, "Cara, I'm this photographer from Belgium. I'm Jerome. I would like to photograph you." And Cara says, "Yes, okay, fine." Or Cara says no, and then moves on. And then you wait for the next person. You ask only the one that you want to photograph. And so after 30 months, we had a a nice portfolio. We had also planned with the Arts Council in Wilson. When I started on the project, they were very much interested. They said, when you're done with the project, we would love to do an exhibition. And so it's exhibition time. We make a selection. And also, we put 7 large photographs outside, in windows to attract people to go inside the Arts Council. And when I see the 7 photographs outside, I said, well, we probably should have done the whole exhibition outside. That was actually a great idea. And so I talked to my dad in Belgium every day. We called each other on Skype every day. So I talked to him about this project, and he said, well, maybe you could do something else. Think about it. Do another show. So that's when I started to contact about 10 French photographers from 3 countries: Belgium, because I'm from Belgium; France, because I work mainly for French newspapers and magazines; and then in the United States, because I live in the United States. Within a week, 9 out of 10 had answered, wow, that sounds like a great idea. Yes, I would be willing to participate, if we put one large photograph on the street. So when I talk large, I mean, the largest photograph in the show is about 150 inches wide. So it's a pretty large,
Wow.
pretty big photo. And so we started to form a committee, and so they said, well, you have 10 photographers, but, from 10 to 100, because one of the board members, said, why don't we do this? 100 photographs for 100 days by 100 different photographers. So it's 100, 100, 100. And said, yeah, I mean, that sounds a great idea. And so some board members, think, well, 10, but you need 100 photographers. But I was so sure that getting the photographers would be the easy part of a festival like that. And indeed, within a few months, we approached. So we would this is the first year, so nobody knows anything about us, the project, the concept, and so on. But we just write letter. I have 2 co-curators working with me, and we send out emails and so on. And of course, being a photographer myself already for more than 30 years then, I knew a lot of people, a lot of photographers around, in many countries. The first edition, started in 2015, and it was actually a big success. And so ever since then, we've been working on it. We are finalizing the last details of the 6th edition that will start in May of next year. And as every year, we'll have our 100 photographers. We have basically 50 women and 50 men, which is quite rare. So we are very strict about that. So every year we show the work of the same amount of men and the same amount of women.
That's awesome.
And so we are really proud of that. Of course, the first year we had just the main show, and now we have 6, 7 different exhibitions every year. We have a children's program since the 2nd year. It's been quite popular. So we work with a little more than 100 children, very young. I mean, the youngest are usually 7, 8 years old. The majority is between 10 and 12. We take them in after-school programs. And so for a week, we go out with them and we take photographs. And it's breathtaking. I mean, everybody who does see the program is really really amazed. And then the 3rd year, we started with the residency program. And that one has been actually quite popular. That one has actually now traveled extensively. That's how I met Eric Weeks in China, in Pingyao last year, because we were invited last year to present our residency program. We came with 7 photographers. This year we came with 10 photographers. And so the idea is that a photographer applies for a residency, and then if he or she is chosen, he stays or she stays about 30 days, a whole month, and works on the project. And then total freedom. I mean, I'm not telling you what you have to photograph. I mean, that's your part. I mean, I will select you to come down, but then once you are down there, it's for you to find your subject. And so we have a photographer now. She's from France, and she is, I think, number 31 in the program. So we had actually 31 photographers, and literally from a little bit everywhere. We had people from Asia, people from Africa, South America. Not yet from Australia, but in February, the photography in February comes from Melbourne, in Australia. So that's how we, try to develop. Each year we try to come with more ideas, more larger projects, and so on.
Fantastic.
So you mentioned a little bit about including the children around the area. What impact has the program had on the community of North Carolina?
So I think the first part, of the question I'd like to answer this way. When when we're talking about large photographs, so the first year nobody knows about us, so people think that, we're going to put a 20-inch print, on the street, and that's going to be a large photograph for most people. And most people now look on their phone screen, so it's like 3x4 or well, not even. So when we picked up like really big photographs, people like really amazed. It's like, going to the museum. And so you don't have to drive into your car to go to the museum. You just walk down the same street that you walk all the time, and the museum comes to you. So because driving to the museum is always sometimes an effort, and we don't have large art museum in Wilson, so people have to take the car, drive 60 miles and so on. Now you don't have to drive those 60 miles anymore, so that it's right there. So that was already, the first, really very positive point where, like, we bring art to you, so there's no excuse not to see the art anymore. Even if you don't have a car, that's okay. You can still see the art in town. So that was actually a huge positive point. Same time, also, we use windows and houses as well as abandoned houses. So we do hide the blight a little bit. So definitely that's another positive point. We make the city look a little bit better than it actually is, because when you take the photograph down, people forget. We have an example right now where we took the photo down and inside the building caved in, and so people had actually forgotten that the building had caved in, because it was like there was a very, very beautiful photograph from Cuba on that building. Going to the kids program, it's giving a chance to children who would never had the chance to do something similar, or at least not now. I mean, maybe some other people come around. I'm not saying we are the only ones. There's other people come around with other programs, but right now we were able to basically give them a meaning and give them the possibility to be creative. And so, because we have 2 exhibitions with the kids program. So the first exhibition is the photographs of the same week. As we go along in the week, we print the photographs and we just basically hang it on the wall. And so the kid comes back the next day and he can see his print on the wall with his name, because of course we print the name of the kid. And so when you see the face of those kids, when they see those photographs on the wall, you think like, this is it. You feel so good, because you see the happiness inside his heart, and then he bumps it to his friends and look, my picture's right there. And then the second show is a selection, a best of the year before. So basically, we have a big outdoor show. So I told you the prints were very big, but their prints are actually I count in centimeters. So for me, it's always complicated. But it's actually the 4x8, if I'm right. It's 92 inches, no? Is that not like those big panels, like 92 inches wide?
Yeah.
Pretty big print. So we actually not mixed with the professional, but we have a separate settings where we put those kids' photograph 90 inch wide. And
That's
so
awesome.
it's like really big posters. And so I think the community has been, quite happy, quite, proud of, the young people. 2 years ago, I took their program to Kuala Lumpur. We've been more and more. We've been basically working with international festival, and so 2 years ago I decided to take only the kids program, not the professionals, only the kids program. And so in Asia, when I was telling people that 10 years old, we did shoot all these photographs, they almost could not believe us. Just kind of so I think it gives a sense of proudness to the whole community. I think that's the way I would put it. Also, it brings community together. We have the railroad. The railroad in Wilson divides, basically white town from black town a little bit, and so we put the photographs also, of course, on the other side of the track. People always call it the other side of the track. There's several funny stories, with that. So basically, the first year I stand by the tracks, the train station's right there, and people come and see the photographs, and then they turn around. So I would stop them and I would say, well, you don't go further. Oh, there's no more photographs there. I said, oh yeah, I'm sure there's more photographs there. I said, are you sure? He said, yeah, I'm totally sure, because I did hang them there. So I'm totally sure there's another 21 photographs on the other side of the tracks. And then I would become really popular with book clubs and so on. So I do book clubs, because I know many stories behind the photographs. I know many photographers. Usually I know about 35-40% of the photographers personally. And so 2 ladies, walking, with me that day took me apart. And so they're both in the 70s, born and raised in Wilson, lived their whole life there. And they said to me, this is the first time in our life that we're actually walking on the other side of the tracks. And I said, those are small victories and those are big victories at the same time, because, it means that finally, with a little bit of art, we manage at least to basically make people understand each other better. It's a small victory, but at the same time, many, many small victories. One day maybe we'll have a big victory and everybody will love each other. I know I'm an optimistic forever, but that's the way to do it, I think.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Understanding how art can bring people together. I mean, even our own city of Lancaster, we find art programs and music programs really important on unifying the cultures.
Especially in today's political climate. It's
Yes.
really important.
Yes.
So we'll transform into the final question. So in one of your interviews with the Wilson Times, the local newspaper for you, you mentioned how if everyone finds a little bit of happiness, then you've reached your goal. So how has photography yourself, how much happiness have you witnessed? I mean, that was a great story. Have you found fulfillment within yourself as well?
Yes, definitely. I mean, the festival gives us a lot of joy because we are able to share our own vision, with many others. We are getting more and more spectators or visitors, if you want. People drive from further to come, so the word does spread around. So we are a small town, basically 60 mile east of our capital, Raleigh and the Triangle. You count about 1 million people live there. Well, there's a say, you've got 95, which is the main, a highway not far away from here. So basically, in North Carolina, people always say, people don't go east of 95. We are just east of 95 because they say there's nothing to do east of 95. And then until you reach the ocean, and of course the ocean, there's a lot of people in the ocean. Mm-hmm. So we are breaking that, a little bit barrier now. We say, no, not right. I mean, there's many things to do actually, not only for Eyes on Main Street, there's many other things, of course, in the other towns that are working as hard. But for us, for our own experience, we're able to track because we have indoor galleries as well. So we have books that we ask people to sign, and more signature now. We see that people say Raleigh or Durham, Chapel Hill or even Greensboro. And so for us, it's a goal achieved, because of course we do not hang the photographs only for us. I mean, for our pleasure, for sure, because to see the big print was William Klein this year. To see a very big print of William Klein, very influenced by his own work when I was young. Is happiness. Every day I go and see the William Klein. When it's there, I go and see the William Klein, of course, every day. But to see that others feel the same, that's even better. And of course, so that others feel a joy and learn something. Because our photographs come from all corners of the world. So again, on every phone now we can have any picture we want. But to see it much larger, where you have time to stand still and look for details, I walk the show every day. At the end of the show, 98 days, I still will find some elements that I haven't found out yet about that picture because, it's a different learning experience than when you look on your phone. Your phone is way too small. I have nothing against phone, don't get me wrong, but so it's a different experience. That's it. And so here we give you the time to stand still. The phone, you can never stand still anymore. It's just well, here you can actually stand still if you decide to stand still and you give yourself 5 minutes and what do I learn from that image? And and that's the way to learn things. Same with the kids. We do the same because of course we show the pictures to the kids and we ask them to find some interesting elements, and kids will find interesting elements, but they need to be taught in a way. So if you don't teach them how to look around, and find whatever is interesting in the picture, then they don't learn the full picture. So I think I can say yes. I mean, of course, I'm speaking for other people, which I don't like to do, but I do think that there's quite a lot of people in downtown that find a lot of happiness in that exhibition, and we can sense it also because we get sponsorship, and because without the sponsorship, it would be really hard to put a show like that together. So I guess people support us because they love it. I mean, if they would hate it, I doubt it very much that they would support us. So in that sense, it's another way to to feel that we people, at least a certain number of people definitely enjoy it very much, and so basically would find it a loss if for some reason we were to disappear.
Well, by developing Eyes on Main Street, your medium and take your involvement with photography so much further than most artists do. I mean, the main goal as an artist is make art as an individual, and then outreach to the public, and have them purchase your art or purchase some sort of service that you do. And by utilizing Eyes on Main Street, you create this sense of community in a city that seems like it was a little bit on the downfall with economic troubles, and using art to just kind of relinquish some of that life. And that's a really honorable thing, and I appreciate you spending the time to come in and talk to us. For those of you listening, make sure you go and visit Jerome's website as well as Eyes on Main Street. Is there any other locations for them to view your art? Or?
That's the best way. I think my website is good, and so Eyes on Main Street as well, so those are probably right now. I've got the Instagram page as well and the festival as well, but starting with the website is probably the best way to learn more about both Eyes on Main Street and my own work.
All right.
Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks for stopping by. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing more of your work.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for inviting me.